I was overjoyed to finally be on Santa Monica Beach, basking in the vibrant afternoon sun. The beach was alive with people, families building sandcastles, couples strolling hand in hand, and friends laughing and playing beach volleyball. The air was thick with the scent of salt and sunscreen, a symphony of human activity, and the rhythmic crashing of waves. I found a cozy spot on my own mat, nestled comfortably beneath my headphones, lost in the rhythm of the waves and my favorite tunes. My worries and anxieties, the weight of everyday life, seemed to melt away with every breath of fresh, salty air. The sun was high, casting a warm golden hue over everything, and I felt an overwhelming sense of relaxation. The ocean stretched out before me, an endless expanse of shimmering blue. The gentle breeze carried the sound of children's laughter and the distant chatter of beach vendors. I closed my eyes, letting the sound of the surf lull me into a deep sleep. When I awoke, my surroundings had transformed. The sun was gone, replaced by the cold, silvery light of the moon. The once bustling beach was now an eerie, desolate wasteland. My heart began to race as I noticed the stark emptiness, the absence of the cheerful chatter and laughter that had surrounded me just hours before. The vibrant colors of the day had been replaced by a monochrome palette of grays and blues, the shadows stretching long and ominous across the sand. I glanced around, hoping for a sign of life, but all I saw was the dark, abandoned stretch of sand. My mat, once a comfortable haven, now felt like a lonely island in a sea of emptiness. My headphones lay on the sand, their vibrant colors seeming strangely out of place in this eerie, silent world. The air was cold and still, the only sound the rhythmic whisper of the waves crashing against the shore. And then, in the distance, I spotted her, a woman dressed in white, moving slowly along the shoreline. Her figure was ethereal, almost ghostly against the moonlit water. Her long, white dress flowed around her like a wisp of smoke, catching the faint moonlight as she walked. Her hair, a cascade of dark curls, seemed to shimmer in the darkness, obscuring her face. I squinted, trying to make sense of the sight. Her movements were unnaturally graceful, as if she were gliding rather than walking. There was a haunting serenity to her gait, a stillness that seemed to defy the natural world. But there was something deeply unsettling about her presence, a quiet, unnerving tension that sent a shiver down my spine. My curiosity gave way to a creeping sense of dread. I tried to convince myself she was just another beachgoer, perhaps someone out for a midnight stroll. But as she drew closer, her movements seemed to defy reality, becoming more fluid and almost supernatural. She moved with an eerie fluidity, her white dress disappearing and reappearing as if she were shifting between dimensions. My heartbeat quickened, and I could feel the cold sweat forming on the back of my neck. Suddenly, she was right in front of me, her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that froze me in place. Her face, now visible in the moonlight, was devoid of expression, her features sharp and angular. Her eyes, a piercing blue, held a depth that seemed to pierce through my very soul, as if she could see my deepest fears and desires. Without warning, she was on top of me, her cold, clammy hands pressing down on my chest, squeezing my throat with a vice-like grip. Her touch sent a shock of icy dread through my body, a chilling sensation that spread from the point of her contact, numbing my limbs and stealing my breath. I struggled to breathe, panic clawing at my chest as I tried to push her away. Her strength was astounding, her grip like an iron vice, constricting my windpipe and cutting off my air supply. Her face was a mask of eerie calm, her eyes devoid of any empathy. I saw no flicker of emotion, no hint of remorse or regret, only a chilling emptiness that reflected the desolation surrounding us. The world seemed to shrink to her face, her icy gaze, her relentless pressure. Just as I was about to lose consciousness, the pressure disappeared, and I was jolted awake. My breath came in ragged gasps as I looked around, disoriented. The beach was bathed in the warm glow of the afternoon sun once again. People were everywhere, enjoying the sun and sea, oblivious to my terror. The sounds of laughter, music, and the crashing waves returned, washing over me like a wave of relief. But then, my blood ran cold. There she was, the same woman in white, standing at a distance, her gaze fixed directly on me. She wasn't moving, just staring with an unsettling, knowing look. Her white dress seemed to blend with the white sand, making it difficult to tell where she ended and the beach began. Her eyes, still piercing blue, held the same chilling intensity as before, as if she were waiting for something. My heart pounded in my chest as I scrambled to my feet, the horrifying memory of her grip still fresh in my mind. The feeling of her cold, clammy hands on my throat, the feeling of suffocating, the fear that I was about to die, it all came flooding back, turning my limbs to jelly. I glanced around, hoping for a logical explanation or a sign that this was all just a trick of my imagination. Maybe I had been asleep for longer than I thought, maybe I had just fallen asleep briefly in the afternoon sun. But the woman remained, her presence a chilling reminder of the nightmare I had just escaped, or perhaps, the one I had yet to fully awaken from. I tried to convince myself that it was just a vivid dream, a figment of my sun-soaked imagination. But even as I tried to rationalize, a sense of unease lingered, a deep-seated fear that something wasn't right. I scanned the beach, looking for any sign of movement, any indication that I wasn't the only one who could see her. But everyone else seemed oblivious, their eyes focused on the sun, the sand, the sea, anything but the woman in white. As I hurried away from my mat, my sense of reality wavered, leaving me with the unnerving question, had it all been a dream, or was there something more sinister waiting in the shadows of the beach? The beach, once a haven of peace and relaxation, now felt like a haunted landscape, its beauty tarnished by the chilling presence of the woman in white. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that her eyes were following me, even as I walked away. The sun, which had provided comfort just moments before, now felt oppressive, its warmth turning into an uncomfortable heat. The sand, which usually felt soft and inviting, now felt cold and unforgiving beneath my feet. I tried to rationalize, to tell myself that it was just a dream, a hallucination brought on by the sun and the stress of everyday life. But the more I tried to rationalize, the more convinced I became that something was wrong. There was something about the woman in white, something about the way she looked at me, that sent a shiver down my spine. I found myself walking faster, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind racing with 1,000 different scenarios. What was she? What did she want? Was she dangerous? Was she here to hurt me? I needed to get away, to find someone, to tell someone. But where could I go? Who could I tell? My mind raced, searching for a solution, an escape, a way to shake off this feeling of impending doom. I reached the boardwalk, its wooden planks cool beneath my feet. The noise of the crowd, the sound of music and laughter, provided a brief sense of security. I stopped at a hot dog stand, hoping to buy myself some time, to get my bearings. But even as I ordered a hot dog, the woman in white was in my peripheral vision. She was sitting on a bench, her white dress blending with the white paint of the wooden benches, her face still devoid of emotion, her eyes fixed on me. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't just ignore her, but I didn't know how to approach her, how to speak to her. I was paralyzed by fear, my mind trapped in a loop of doubt and uncertainty. Did she actually exist? Was she real? Or was this just a cruel trick of my mind, a manifestation of my deepest fears? Suddenly, a loud laugh broke through the silence. A group of friends, their faces flushed with sun and laughter, were walking toward me. This was my chance to escape, to blend in with the crowd, to get away from the woman in white. I quickly finished my hot dog, my hands shaking as I handed the vendor a bill. I joined the group of friends, their laughter and chatter a welcome distraction from the chilling presence of the woman in white. I tried to make myself believe that I was safe now, that I had escaped. But as we walked along the boardwalk, I couldn't shake the feeling that her eyes were still on me, her gaze fixed on me, even as I walked away. My heart pounded in my chest, and my breath came in quick, shallow breaths. The friends, sensing my unease, tried to make conversation, to distract me from whatever was bothering me. But I could barely focus on their words, my thoughts consumed by the image of the woman in white, her haunting stare etched into my memory. We reached the pier, its length stretching out into the ocean like a long, wooden finger pointing towards the horizon. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the water, turning the sky into a symphony of orange, pink, and purple hues. The friend suggested getting ice cream, but I declined, my stomach churning with unease. I felt the need to escape, to get away from the crowd, to find a place where I could be alone, where I could think, where I could try to make sense of what had happened. I excused myself from the group, promising to meet them back at the beach. I walked away from the pier, my steps quickening as I retreated further and further from the crowd. I wandered aimlessly, my eyes scanning the beach, searching for the woman in white, but she was nowhere to be seen. I walked for a long time, the sun setting behind me, casting long shadows over the beach. The air grew cooler, the sound of the waves growing louder. The beach was now deserted, the last of the crowds having gone home. I stopped at the water's edge, the waves crashing against the sand a few feet away. I sat down on a rock, my feet dangling over the water, and tried to calm my racing mind. There was nothing to see but the dark ocean, the white caps reflecting the dying light of the sun. The air was cool and still, the only sound the rhythmic crashing of the waves. I tried to remember my dream, to analyze it, to find some logical explanation, but the details were hazy, fragmented, the images fleeting and elusive. The woman in white, her cold, clammy hands, the feeling of suffocation, the emptiness in her eyes, these were all that remained, vivid and haunting. Then I heard a faint sound, a whisper carried on the wind. I turned, my heart skipping a beat. There, standing in the distance, silhouetted against the dying light of the sun, was the woman in white. Her white dress, illuminated by the last rays of the setting sun, appeared to be glowing, as if she were made of moonlight. Her face was still obscured by her hair, but her eyes, two piercing blue orbs, locked onto mine. This time, she didn't move towards me. She simply stood there, watching me, her gaze unwavering. I stood up, my body trembling with fear. I wanted to run, but my legs felt frozen to the spot, as if some unseen force was holding me in place. I tried to speak, to ask her what she wanted, but no sound came out. The woman in white simply stared at me, her eyes unwavering, her face devoid of expression. I couldn't look away. Her gaze held me spellbound, as if I were a moth drawn to a flame. Then, a cold wind blew, and the woman in white was gone. She had vanished as quickly as she had appeared, leaving behind only the sound of the waves and the cold, unsettling silence of the beach. I stood there for a long time, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind racing with a million questions. Was it real? Or had I finally lost my mind? I didn't know what to believe anymore. The world had become a blurry, uncertain place, where reality and dreams bled into each other, where shadows danced and whispers echoed. I turned and started walking back to my car, my footsteps echoing in the silence of the beach. The night was closing in, the moon now high in the sky, its cold, silver light bathing the beach in a ghostly glow. As I drove away, I could see the woman in white standing at the water's edge, her white dress blending with the white caps of the waves, her face still obscured by her hair, her piercing blue eyes fixed on me. She was still there, watching me, as I drove away into the darkness. I never went back to that beach. The memory of the woman in white haunted me, a chilling reminder of the dark secrets that lurked beneath the surface of the seemingly peaceful world. And to this day, I still wonder if it was all real, or just a dream. My wife, our 10-year-old son Noah, and I had been looking forward to our vacation at the beach resort for months. The promise of sun, sand, and relaxation had been a beacon of light in our hectic lives. After settling into our rooms, we spent the day building sandcastles, swimming in the ocean, and enjoying our time together as a family. That night, as we all settled into our rooms, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had crept into my consciousness. I dismissed it as paranoia and tried to focus on the relaxing evening ahead. Noah had his own room next to ours, and as usual, he left his door slightly ajar because he didn't like the dark. Around 3 a.m., I was jolted awake by the sound of my name being called. It wasn't Dad, but my actual name. I sat up in bed, disoriented and half asleep, wondering if I had been dreaming. But the sound was unmistakable. I got up and made my way to Noah's room, my heart pounding in my chest. I peeked in, and there he was, sound asleep in his bed. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but that feeling was quickly replaced by confusion. I gently woke him up and asked, "Noah, you were calling me. Is everything okay?" Noah, still groggy, looked up at me and said, "Dad, when they call you, you're not supposed to answer," then drifted back to sleep like nothing had happened. I stood there for a moment, processing what had just happened. I was sure I had heard my name, and I was equally sure that Noah had been the one to say it. But what did he mean by, "When they call you, you're not supposed to answer"? Who was they? I decided to let it go, attributing it to a strange dream or a sleep-talking incident. I tucked Noah back in and went back to bed, but I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had taken root in my mind. The next morning, I asked Noah if he remembered saying what he had said in the middle of the night. He looked at me blankly and shook his head. He didn't remember anything. I tried to put the incident out of my mind and enjoy the rest of our vacation, but the feeling of unease lingered. I couldn't help but feel like there was something off about the resort, something that I couldn't quite put my finger on. One day, we decided to explore the nearby town and see what it had to offer. We stumbled upon an old, dilapidated church on the outskirts of town. The church was surrounded by a graveyard, and I could feel a chill run down my spine as we approached. We decided to go inside, and as we walked down the aisle, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. I turned around, and to my surprise I saw a figure standing in the back of the church. It was a woman, dressed in all black, with a veil covering her face. I nudged my wife and pointed to the woman, but when I looked back, she was gone. I shrugged it off as my imagination playing tricks on me and continued to explore the church. As we were leaving, I noticed a plaque on the wall that detailed the history of the church. It dated back to the 1800s and had a long history of strange occurrences and unexplained phenomena. I felt a shiver run down my spine as I read the plaque, wondering if there was more to this vacation than met the eye. That night, as I lay in bed, I couldn't shake the feeling of unease. I kept thinking about the woman in the church, the strange incident with Noah, and the feeling of being watched. I convinced myself that I was being paranoid and tried to go to sleep, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I must have dozed off because I was jolted awake by the sound of my name again. This time, I was sure it wasn't a dream. I got up and followed the sound to Noah's room. I peeked in, and there he was, standing in the middle of the room, staring at the wall. "Noah, what are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Noah turned around, and I could see that his eyes were wide with fear. "They're here, Dad," he said, his voice shaking. "Who's here, Noah?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "The ghosts," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They're in my room." I looked around the room, but I didn't see anything. I turned back to Noah, who was still staring at the wall with a look of terror in his eyes. "Noah, there's nothing here," I said, trying to reassure him. But just as the words left my mouth, I saw it. A faint outline of a figure, barely visible, on the wall. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that Noah was telling the truth. There were ghosts in the room. I quickly grabbed Noah and we ran out of the room, not stopping until we reached the safety of the lobby. I looked around, half expecting to see ghostly figures everywhere, but the lobby was empty. I took a deep breath, trying to calm myself down. I couldn't believe what was happening. Ghosts? At our vacation resort? It seemed impossible, but I couldn't deny what I had seen. I decided to investigate further, and I spent the rest of the night researching the history of the resort and the surrounding area. I discovered that the resort was built on top of an old Native American burial ground, and that there had been numerous reports of strange occurrences and ghost sightings in the area. I couldn't believe what I was reading. It all seemed so far-fetched, and yet I couldn't deny the evidence in front of me. I knew that I had to do something to protect my family, but I didn't know what. The next morning, I gathered my wife and Noah and told them what I had discovered. They looked at me in disbelief, but I could see the fear in their eyes. They knew that something wasn't right. We decided to leave the resort and head back home, but as we were packing our things, I heard it again. The sound of my name being called, this time from outside. I looked out the window, and to my horror, I saw the woman in black, standing in the courtyard, staring up at our window. I knew that we had to leave, immediately. We grabbed our things and ran out of the resort, not stopping until we reached the safety of our car. I looked back, and I could see the woman in black, still standing there, watching us. We drove away, not stopping until we reached the safety of our own home. I couldn't believe what had happened, and I knew that I would never forget the terror that I had felt during our vacation. To this day, I still get chills thinking about that night, and I can't help but wonder what would have happened if we had stayed any longer. But one thing is for sure, we will never go back to that beach resort, or any other place where ghosts may roam. The relentless thumping of the waves against the shore, a rhythmic drumbeat in the silence of the night, was the only sound accompanying my anxiety. Huddled beneath the flimsy canvas of my tent, I felt scant protection from the cool, salt-lace breeze whipping through the isolated beach. It wasn't the wind that chilled me to the bone, but the growing sense of dread that had gnawed at my insides since the sun dipped below the horizon. Just hours ago, I was buzzing with excitement. Finally reaching this remote stretch of coastline felt like a dream come true. This place, a hidden gem revealed by an old, yellowed map from my college days, had been a lifelong obsession. The map, a family heirloom, promised adventure and escape along rugged, deserted beaches. Now, I was living that dream, a solitary figure on a secluded beach, surrounded by the vast expanse of the sea and towering cliffs. As the sun descended, casting long, ominous shadows, my excitement gave way to unease. It started with a whisper of doubt: was I truly alone? The beach was as isolated as advertised, accessible only by a treacherous trail through dense undergrowth. The silence was deafening, broken only by the crashing waves and the occasional cry of a seabird. But it was an unnervingly perfect silence, as if the natural sounds had been muted, replaced by a profound, unsettling quiet. I tried to rationalize my fears. Solitude was what I'd craved, the escape I'd yearned for. Yet, the more I tried to convince myself, the stronger the feeling of being watched became. I kept glancing over my shoulder, scanning the shadows cast by the cliffs, my heart thumping a frantic rhythm. As darkness enveloped the beach, my unease transformed into fear. It wasn't just the isolation or the howling wind against my tent, which sounded like a chorus of mournful wails. It was the sensation of being observed, a predator circling its prey. Every creak of the tent, every rustling leaf, every snap of a twig sent shivers down my spine. My imagination, fueled by fear, painted terrifying images of shadowy figures lurking in the darkness, their eyes glinting in the faint moonlight, their intentions hidden behind a veil of secrecy. The night stretched on, an eternity of anxious anticipation. I tried to sleep, but every rustle of the canvas sent me scrambling for my flashlight, my fingers trembling as I swept the beam across the empty space outside. The fear kept me awake, a relentless companion whispering insidious doubts. With the first light of dawn, I emerged from my tent, my body stiff, my mind exhausted. The beach, bathed in the soft light of the rising sun, felt safe once more. But the fear, though subdued, lingered, a gnawing suspicion beneath the surface of my consciousness. I tried to focus on the beauty of the beach, exploring the coastline, collecting shells, and soaking in the untouched landscape. But every sound and movement set my nerves on edge. As evening approached, the familiar dread returned, stronger than the previous night. The darkness would bring with it a resurgence of fear, and I wasn't prepared for it. This place, once a beacon of adventure, now felt like a prison. Deciding to leave, I packed up my things, but the trail back to civilization seemed longer and more perilous than before. Shadows danced with malevolent glee, and the silence felt heavier, more ominous. My heart pounded, a frantic drumbeat against the suffocating quiet. Reaching the point where the trail met the dense undergrowth, I stopped, consumed by paralyzing fear. I felt watched, stalked. Something, or someone, was lurking in the darkness, its presence felt more than seen. I forced myself to move, stumbling through the undergrowth, branches whipping against my face, thorns tearing at my clothes. The fear intensified with every rustle, every snap, feeding my growing terror. Then, a sound, a whisper so low it was almost inaudible, came from behind me. A voice that sent ice through my veins. "We've been watching you," it hissed. I froze, every instinct screaming to flee, but my legs refused to obey. The voice felt too close, emanating from the darkness behind me, yet I couldn't see its source. Stumbling back, my heart pounded, my breath catching in my throat. I wanted to scream, but the fear choked the sound, leaving me with only strangled gasps. "You shouldn't have come here," the voice continued, chillingly amused. "This place is not for the likes of you. Who are you? What do you want?" I stammered, my voice trembling, barely audible. The only response was a low, guttural chuckle, ancient and primordial, as if from the depths of time itself. I turned and fled, my legs churning, my lungs burning. The fear propelled me forward, making me avoid looking back, terrified of what I might see in the shadows clinging to my heels. I ran until my legs gave way, collapsing onto the soft earth, convulsing with sobs, tears streaming down my face. Exhausted and broken, the terror etched into my being. Lying there for what felt like an eternity, the fears slowly receded, replaced by a creeping despair. Alone, trapped in a desolate place, hunted by something I didn't understand, something that lived in the darkness, in the shadows. Then, a sound, a soft rustling from the undergrowth behind me. I forced myself to turn, eyes wide with terror. But there was nothing there, just the rustling leaves, the whisper of wind through the trees. As dawn broke, bathing the landscape in a soft, ethereal light, I rose to my feet, trembling, my mind spinning. The fear, though diminished, still lingered, a haunting reminder of the terror I had faced. I knew I had to leave, but the trail back to civilization seemed an impossible distance. I walked, my legs aching, my body protesting, the fear following me like an unwelcome shadow. When I finally reached the road, the fear finally left me, replaced by profound relief. I had escaped the darkness, the silence, the haunting presence of that isolated beach. Yet, the experience would stay with me forever, a permanent scar etched into my memory. The fear was gone, but the silence, the chilling whispers, the sense of being watched, would remain, a haunting reminder of the night I faced my own mortality on that isolated beach. I had always dreamed of exploring the lesser-known corners of the world, so when my husband and I decided to visit Russia, Sukho Beach quickly made it onto our itinerary. Nestled in the Krasnodar Krai region, Sukho Beach promised picturesque views and an escape from the bustle of daily life. The beach was known for its scenic beauty, but what drew me in were the whispers of its eerie past, legends of old military installations and ghostly apparitions. I told myself it was just folklore, a local myth to make the place seem more intriguing. The thought of exploring the remnants of forgotten military structures, of perhaps catching a glimpse of a ghostly figure flitting through the twilight, was exhilarating. It was a thrill that resonated with the adventurous side of me, the side that craved the unknown, the side that found solace in the inexplicable. Our journey to Sukho Beach was long and arduous. We arrived at the end of August, the air thick with the humidity of the approaching autumn. The drive from the bustling city of Krasnodar was an odyssey in itself, winding our way through rolling hills and dense forests, the scent of pine needles filling the air. It was a stark contrast to the vibrant city life we had left behind, a transition into a world that felt ancient, untouched, and shrouded in mystery. The moment we laid eyes on Sukho Beach, I felt a sense of awe. The vast expanse of golden sand stretched before us, kissed by the clear, cerulean waters of the Black Sea. Palm trees swayed gently in the sea breeze, their leaves rustling like whispers in the air. It was a scene of breathtaking beauty, a postcard paradise, and yet, an unsettling stillness hung over it all. The air was thick with an inexplicable melancholy, as though the beach itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The first few days at Succo Beach were idyllic. The sun-drenched sands and crystal-clear waters were everything we had hoped for. My husband and I spent our days lounging under the sun, swimming in the sea, and enjoying the tranquil environment. We explored the surrounding area, discovering ancient ruins nestled amidst the lush foliage, remnants of a past life that whispered tales of forgotten civilizations. Despite the pleasant weather and picturesque surroundings, there was an undercurrent of unease I couldn't quite shake. The beach, though beautiful, had an oddly deserted feel, even during the day. The only sounds were the gentle murmur of the waves and the occasional cry of a seagull. The laughter of children playing, the lively chatter of tourists, the familiar soundtrack of a bustling beach, were all absent. It felt as though we were the only souls daring to tread its sands. As the days turned into nights, the unease intensified. With the setting sun, a cloak of darkness descended upon the beach, swallowing the vibrant colors of the day and replacing them with an unsettling stillness. The air grew thick and heavy, laden with the scent of salt water and something else, something I couldn't quite place, something vaguely metallic and ominous. One evening, as the sun began its descent, painting the sky in hues of pink and orange, we decided to take a late stroll along the shoreline. The soft breeze rustled the palm trees, and the sound of the waves crashing gently against the shore was soothing. We walked hand in hand, the beach seemingly stretching out endlessly before us. As darkness fell, the atmosphere changed. The beach, once bathed in sunlight, now seemed to hold its breath in the cool twilight. The once clear water took on a murky quality, and the shadows grew longer, more pronounced. The shadows themselves seemed to pulse with an unseen life, twisting and turning as if stirred by an unseen wind. My husband, ever the adventurer, was captivated by the growing darkness. He laughed as he playfully chased me down the beach, his footsteps muffled by the soft sand. I, however, was growing increasingly nervous. The silence, the stillness, the eerie feeling of being watched, it all gnawed at my composure. "It's just the shadows playing tricks on us, honey," he said, his voice a soothing balm to my growing anxieties. "Let's not be afraid of a little darkness." But the darkness was more than just the trick of the light. I felt it in my bones. It was a palpable entity, a presence that wrapped itself around us, chilling us to the core. We ventured further than usual, drawn by a strange compulsion to explore a more secluded part of the beach. As we reached a particularly isolated stretch, I noticed that the sand was littered with old, rusted objects, remnants of a bygone era, perhaps from the military installations rumored to be nearby. The objects were scattered haphazardly, a strange assortment of metal fragments, tangled wires, and crumbling concrete, each piece whispering tales of a forgotten past. My husband seemed fascinated, inspecting the remnants with a mix of curiosity and reverence. He picked up a rusted metal plate, its surface etched with faded Cyrillic lettering. "This looks like a piece of a tank," he said, his voice tinged with awe. "Imagine the stories it could tell." I shivered, a cold dread creeping up my spine. The remnants of war, so close to the beauty of the beach, felt like a stark contrast, a warning of the darkness that lurked beneath the surface of this idyllic place. The evening grew colder, and a dense fog began to roll in from the sea, obscuring the horizon and swallowing the last light of the setting sun. The mist was thick and unnervingly silent, wrapping the beach in a heavy blanket of stillness. The familiar sounds of the beach, the gentle lapping of waves, the rustling of palm leaves, were now muffled and distant. It felt as if the whole world was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. I looked at my husband, his face illuminated by the faint glow of his phone screen. He was still captivated by the remnants of the old military installations, completely oblivious to the growing sense of unease that enveloped me. "Let's head back," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "It's getting too late." He looked up, a slight frown on his face. "But the fog's clearing, look!" He gestured to the horizon, where the mist was indeed beginning to dissipate. "We can go a little further." My apprehension grew, but I didn't want to dampen his adventurous spirit. He was so excited by this unexpected discovery, so eager to explore the secrets of this forgotten place. I couldn't bring myself to deny him that, not when it was something so small in the face of the breathtaking beauty that surrounded us. "All right," I agreed, trying to sound more enthusiastic than I felt. "Just let's stay close to the shore." As we walked, the fog seemed to thicken, and the familiar surroundings quickly became disorienting. The sand beneath our feet felt colder, damp and clammy. The sounds of the beach, once clear and comforting, were now muffled and distant. I clung to my husband's hand, trying to steady my growing sense of dread. "We should probably turn back," I said, my voice trembling. "I don't like this." He squeezed my hand reassuringly. "It's just a little fog, honey, nothing to be scared of. We're almost there." But the fear had taken root in me, a cold, clammy hand gripping my heart. The fog seemed to close in on us, swallowing our surroundings into a swirling mass of white. The air grew thick and heavy, pressing down on us like an invisible weight. Suddenly, I felt him pull away, and I turned to see him stepping further into the fog. "Are you okay?" I called out, my voice trembling. There was no response. I stepped forward, straining to see through the dense fog. My husband's silhouette was just visible ahead of me, but he seemed to be moving away, almost as if he were being drawn by some unseen force. I called out again, but my voice seemed swallowed by the fog, lost in the oppressive silence. "Michael!" I called out, desperation rising in my voice. "Where are you going?" There was no response. It was as if he had simply vanished into thin air, leaving me alone in the swirling mist. The last thing I saw was his figure disappearing into the mist, and then, just as suddenly as it had appeared, the fog began to lift. I found myself alone on the beach, the oppressive silence replaced by the gentle lapping of waves against the shore. I stumbled back to where we had started, my heart racing and my mind reeling. The beach, now illuminated by the pale light of the moon, was eerily calm. The fog had vanished as quickly as it had come, but there was no sign of my husband. I searched frantically, calling out his name, but the only response was the hollow echo of my own voice. I ran along the shoreline, my eyes darting from side to side, searching for any sign of him, any clue to his whereabouts. But the beach was empty, silent, deserted. As I made my way back to our accommodation, panic set in. The beach, once a place of relaxation and beauty, had become a scene of haunting desolation. The warmth of the day, the comforting sounds of the sea, the laughter of my husband, all felt like distant memories, replaced by a chilling emptiness. I stumbled into our room, my mind racing, my body shaking with fear. I tried to call out to him, but my voice choked in my throat, and I collapsed onto the bed, my tears flowing freely. He had vanished. He was gone. And I was left alone, haunted by the chilling silence of that empty beach. In the morning, I reported his disappearance to the local authorities. The police arrived, their faces grim, their eyes searching for clues in my panicked recounting of the events. They searched the beach, the surrounding area, and even the nearby villages, but their efforts yielded no results. Days turned into weeks, and the search continued. The beach, once a source of joy, became a symbol of my loss, a constant reminder of the inexplicable events that had shattered my world. The local villagers, their faces hardened by the harshness of their lives, shook their heads sadly, whispering tales of the ancient spirits that haunted the beach, of the fog that swallowed unsuspecting souls. I clung to the hope that Michael was still alive, that he was lost, that he would somehow find his way back. But as the days stretched into weeks, and the weeks into months, that hope began to dwindle. The police had given up their search, and the local villagers offered their condolences, their words a hollow echo of my own despair. I left Succo Beach with a heavy heart, but not without a nagging sense of unease. The beauty of the beach had been tainted by the darkness that had swallowed my husband, a darkness that seemed to live in the shadows, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to wander into its embrace. The years that followed were a blur of grief and guilt. I struggled to come to terms with the loss, with the inexplicable events that had taken Michael from me. I tried to rebuild my life, to find solace in the memories of our shared moments, but the emptiness within me remained, a constant reminder of the night he vanished into the fog. I tried to forget Succo Beach, to bury its memory deep within the recesses of my mind. But the haunting images remained: the deserted beach, the swirling fog, the chilling silence, the shadows that danced in the twilight. And the memories of my husband, his laughter, his warmth, his adventurous spirit, were forever intertwined with the chilling reality of his disappearance. The years have passed, but the memory of that night remains vivid in my mind, a constant reminder of the mysteries that lie hidden beneath the surface of our world. I have returned to Succo Beach countless times, drawn by a desperate need to understand what happened, to find some closure to my pain. Each time, I feel the same sense of unease, the same chilling dread that gripped me that night. The beach, once a place of beauty, now holds a chilling memory, a reminder of the inexplicable events of that evening. The beauty of the beach, the warmth of the sun, the gentle murmur of the waves, all seem to be tainted by the darkness that swallowed my husband. As I reflect on that evening, I am left with the unsettling question: was it simply an unfortunate accident, a tragic twist of fate, or was there something more malevolent at play, hidden within the fog of Succo Beach? I have sought answers in the ancient legends of the beach, in the whispers of the local villagers, in the remnants of the old military installations, but the truth remains elusive. The mystery of my husband's disappearance remains unsolved, a gaping wound in my heart that time has not healed. The beach, now forever etched in my memory, is a haunting reminder of the fragility of life, of the darkness that lurks beneath the surface of our seemingly idyllic world. And the memory of Michael, the man I loved, the man who vanished into the fog, will forever be intertwined with the chilling silence of Succo Beach.